Welcome everyone to the Maxwell show. Today I have my great friend Ryan David Tuttle. We've been friends for how long have we been friends on Twitter? It's been a while.
I was gonna say like in like real life because we've chatted for like 5 minutes, but on Twitter it's been a
Yeah,
while. I
yeah.
don't
I
know.
think it's been like a year.
I haven't been using Twitter for that long. I My account's from 2012, but I haven't really started using it since I didn't really start using it until like August of last year.
Damn. Yeah,
So
we're kind of in the same boat. Well,
at least since August.
yeah. So we've been reaching out for the past 2 weeks, and we've had minor miscommunications, but he's finally on today. So, Ryan, I thank you for coming on the show.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, Ryan is a graduated magna cum laude. I did not know that. With an AA, that is a
Just associates of art.
associate's degree, right? I knew that. I'm a college dropout over here, so I don't know the lingo. In liberal arts from Quinn, I cannot pronounce that, community college, and graduated cum laude with a bachelor's in psychology and a minor in psychobiology from Worcester State University. Ryan studies behavioral neuroscience as a PhD student at the University of New Hampshire. And today we're going to get into everything Ryan knows and everything Ryan does, and hopefully both of our audiences will take away from this with a lot of new information. So, Ryan, I'm interested. How did you get started? And because you actually your field is something that I'm interested in, and I actually thought about briefly. I thought about going back to school and studying that, but I think I'm just gonna wait until the tides calm down, if you know what I'm saying. So I want to know. I want to know how were you always interested in in psychology as a kid, or is it something that you just said, "Oh, I probably can do this," and you just started studying it?
So I would say that I was always interested in psychology. My understanding of psychology has developed a lot, you know.
Yeah.
But I actually have very specific memories as a child. I believe I have two different memories where somebody asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said a psychologist. And at the time, I have no idea why I said psychologist. I'm not sure what my
Yeah.
understanding was at the time, but I do recall having those discussions. And so why I thought that as a child, I don't know. But I feel like uh, I've kind of had a renewed interest as an adult where I went back to school because I went back to school as an adult as well. So I was like 20, 27, 28 when I started going back to college. Yeah.
How old are you now?
I'm 34.
Wow, man.
Yeah. So
You do not look 34 at all.
thank you, thank you. Yeah. But
You're
so
10 years older than me.
if you're 24, yeah.
That's insane. That's insane.
So it's not too late. It's not too late.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I actually went to college originally when I graduated from high school, which was in 2005. And I went for, I think, maybe 2 semesters to that community college, which is pronounced Quinsigamond Community College.
Quinsigamond, okay.
Yeah,
And that's in New Hampshire too.
that's in Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's Central Massachusetts Community College. And so I went there for like a semester or two, and then I dropped out. And I didn't go
Why?
back until like ten years later.
Why?
Why did I drop out of school? Um, so looking back, there's probably a whole bunch of reasons. At the time, I feel like if you had asked me, I felt like my environment at home was unhealthy, and because of my family's religion, which kind of discouraged college and higher education. So like there was a combination of factors going on. But at the time when I was going,
Yeah.
I was working. So I had graduated from high school. I did not have a job. I was just living at home. I had never worked, and I wasn't happy. I wanted to move out of my parents' house. I wanted to do some sort of work, and I just didn't want to be trapped in that environment. And so
Yeah.
I dropped out of college because I thought that that would help me for some reason. I made those decisions. I don't know if they were smart decisions, but they were the decisions I made. But
And
because I
how
moved
old
out
were
there,
you?
I would have been
24. Did you say?
no, I would have been like 19.
Oh, 19. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, because I graduated. I was 17 or 18 when I graduated, and so
Yeah.
I would have been like 18, 19. when I dropped out and I wanted to move out of my parents' house.
And were you a magna cum laude in high school or community college? You
You
weren't?
weren't?
No, yeah, no. I actually in
What
What
is
is
that?
that?
Is
Is
that
that
like
like
the
the highest
highest like
like
yeah.
grade?
grade?
So honestly, I forget which ones are which, but there's like three categories
Like
of,
Like
summa
summa.
cum laude, magna cum laude, and just regular cum laude.
and they're Latin for something, but I don't know what they are. And I know that they're supposed to be like they're
Let's
Just
not, don't
don't
search
search
that
that
up. You
up. You
might
might
get
get
something you
something you
don't
don't
want to
want
see.
to see.
I know, right? But they're like academic honors, and they do mean something. It's like graduating at the top percentages of your class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's good to have them, but I don't remember what they mean. Like as far as what the ones I have, I don't have the top one. I didn't make it to the very, very top one.
I mean, well, you might as well. I mean, like 14 people like get that like in school. That's like a major achievement.
In like your high school.
Well, in
Well,
my
my
high
high
school,
school,
like
like
what,
what?
like 3 people or probably 4 in my graduating class got any of those like special titles. So
I don't remember from my, so I went to a vocational school, and I don't remember special titles like that, like honors
yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. I don't remember that at all. They may have had them. I just didn't care. so so
All right.
so I don't
Sorry,
remember.
I'm getting off track. So what made you get back? So when you dropped out, what made you go back?
So part of that is my religious experience, which I know you want to talk about a little bit.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that.
Part of that is my religious experience, and I'd left the religion that I was born into, which was a pretty traumatic experience. And up until that point, which this is like maybe I was like 27. It's a bit of a transition, but maybe I was 27 or so. Um, I I left the religion, but my religion was my entire life. Like it was absolutely everything. And that's what I spent all my time doing, and all of my resources and energy were put to my sort of religious experience.
You left that at the same time you dropped out of college. Those were around that same time.
When I dropped out of college, I was kind of experiencing a renewed interest in religion. And
Mm.
so I kind of re-pursued the religion that I was born into
What
because
is it? What is that religion for people that may not know? What was it?
Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was born to a family of Jehovah's Witnesses, and it was my immediate family, but also all of my extended family. So all of my grandparents, most of my aunts and uncles, that sort of thing. So I was born to that religion, but my family was what they would call inactive. So they still kind of believed the teachings of the religion, but weren't actively attending meetings. And so they have 5 meetings a week that you're supposed to attend, and you're supposed to go out preaching regularly. And so my family wasn't doing that for my sort of teenage years, but they still kind of believed and raised us in that sort of tradition. And so I kind of thought that, like as I was taught, that the sort of angst that I was experiencing was due to us not being active enough with the religion. And so
Mm.
when I was in my late teens, I kind of re-pursued religion independently of my family because I felt like that was the correct path forward at the time.
And that religion you tried to re-pursue, was that the same one or a different one?
Same religion, yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it
That's
was
interesting.
actually originally I went back to the same congregation that I had been in my entire life. Um, and so and that's the same congregation that like I had like aunts and uncles that went to that congregation, and my grandparents went to that congregation.
Yeah.
um, and so I went there. I got baptized as an adult, and I became what they call a ministerial servant, which I think in the Catholic Church is kind of analogous to a deacon. And I think most Christian churches have similar sorts of structures and positions, but in the
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses, it's a ministerial servant, which is like a step down from the pastor sort of position that they have, which is in Jehovah's Witnesses would be called an elder.
Okay. Yeah. So if you don't mind, like I'm interested. Like we can dive into what type of because I know a lot of people. I have a friend who had a really traumatic experience with religious people and religious his family. It's just kind of I don't want to assume your situation, but I think a lot of people get turned away from religion as a whole because of those traumatic experiences. I know I was watching this video of Jordan Peterson. He was talking to I don't know if you know John Vervaeke. He said that he had He's a professor at the University of Toronto. He's really, really, really smart. I like his work. He's also a psychologist too, and he has kind of like your same story. He had a traumatic experience with religion as well, and so did my friend. So I'm interested in. I want to know how your trauma with religion, or if you don't mind me using that word, your experience with religion, how has that affect your work psychologically? Because if you look at the psychoanalysts and the psychologists, they're all deeply, deeply enshrined in like religious talk, like religious material, and I want to know how that, well, how like when you approach these certain things, like if you look at Jung's work, like it's just littered with Christianity and just in symbolism and that type of mythological talk. So how do you? So when you're reading, when you're practicing, and when you're studying your work, how do you believe any of the when you come across those certain terms, or when you come across these certain things? How does all that? That's a really scattered question. So just do whatever you can with it.
So, so I think the first thing that I would say is that a lot of people, when they hear psychology, they think of clinical psychology, which is more like psychoanalysis. It's more like Freud.
Yeah. Sorry, you're more in the psychobiological.
Yeah. So people think of
I got you.
Of like,
but even still, I mean, well, yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. So they think of like Freud, Carl Rogers, Jung, which are this counseling sort of thing, which I feel like does seem to have some overlap with like pastoral sort of work, and in some ways, it almost seems like therapists might be like replacing religion in some ways, or like of like maybe
you actually got accused from starting a cult.
Okay, so I've never heard that before, but I do feel like so I understand where you're coming from now, because at first I was like, what are you talking about as far as the religion?
Yeah.
But I think some of those in the counseling sort of stuff, people are talking about people's experience and stuff, and especially some of like I think those older people were like drawing like the symbolism and stuff like that, which I actually don't know a whole lot about those guys because I don't do the clinical psychology. So my sort of branch of psychology, you can have two broad branches. One is like applied stuff, which is the clinical stuff, and one would be more sort of research science based, which is not about treating, whereas the clinical stuff is about, they might also do science, but they're studying like mental illness and how to diagnose and treat and help people. Whereas the other side of things, which is sometimes called behavioral science, is more about just understanding the nature of behavior. Like, how does the brain work? Like, what is the basic functioning parts of these things, and how do they work? And so that's kind of what I'm into, and that tends to overlap a lot with or might overlap a lot with biology and evolution. And so those are my sorts of perspectives and takes. So like my view of psychology is not religious in nature, although I'm not entirely opposed to religion either. But yeah, so I view psychology through those sorts of lenses. Yeah,
that's cool. So if you don't mind, like what type of like studies are you doing right now currently? Because you're currently seeking your PhD, which I applaud you for right now. We need more people who are competent in, because to me, I mean, you seem like a really competent dude, and I think we need more people, because because you and I, we both know the university life and the college students, it's an abysmal situation we're in right now. Like this whole wokeism going on, and maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe it's different, I don't know. But just from what I've seen, we're in a really bad spot. So it's crucial we have people who are not over the deep end yet, who can go into these fields and speak their truth. I hate saying that. Speak their truth and kind of restore it. So I'm looking at you as kind of like a messiah in the in the world, in the realm of. I'm going to torture you with that talk this whole entire time. That's how I'm looking at you as. So what type of studies are you doing right now as far as psychobiological work?
I'd like to comment on some of the things that you said first. So I have actually spoken to other people who have, I feel like, given me undue adulation as well, and being like, well, you're not woke, but you're doing psychology, so you're like a saint or something, which I feel like I get where they're coming from. And it's flattering, but maybe a little bit undue. I do agree that there's problems with universities, and I think that like the woke stuff is definitely here. But on the flip side, to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit, I do think that not everyone is always on the same page. I feel like
Yeah.
while that woke up is here, I don't know that it's like directly impacting me as much as it might impact other people. And I don't know that even people that I interact with who I would maybe I might describe as somewhat woke. I don't know that they're necessarily 100% on board with everything that we associate with wokeness. So I do think that there's some nuance, and I don't think that like everyone who's a professor agrees on things because they
Yeah.
definitely don't. And like the scope of some of the like again, this is like wokeness is very sort of broad and somewhat abstract, I guess. But I don't know what the scope is of how many people actually believe these things or are actually on board with those things. So that I feel like that would be like a little bit of a devil's advocate position there. But um, to move on to what you were saying as far as what I'm studying. So in my program, it's a general psychology program. And so in a PhD program, you don't take a lot of traditional classes, which is something that I didn't really understand originally. We do
Yeah.
have these seminars that we take, and the seminars are actually based on like whatever the professor's specialties are. So as far as the seminar
Okay.
coursework, and in the seminars are like we kind of meet together and we will discuss the research on a particular topic, but that will be from a very broad range of subjects, again whatever the professors specialize in. So I've had someone on the psychology of discourse, the psychology of culture and development, on like navigation, on addiction, those sorts of things. But as far as what I'm specifically studying, that can be described as animal cognition, or even more
Okay.
specifically, it'd be like how animals think and how animals navigate and remember the spaces that they're in, that sort of stuff.
That's cool. So, what type of what things have you discovered as far as animal cognition?
I mean, as far as like research,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so I'm
Because
Right
actually
right
now,
now, for anyone who might not know, I'm working. I think I told you I'm working on a book, and I don't want to give too much of the secret sauce away. But I'm on this part now. I'm studying gray parrots. They're actually one of the you probably know a lot about them. The gray parrots, one of like the smartest birds in the entire world, and I'm studying so much about them, and it's so rare that they have the actual ability to speak. And I'm looking in papers. I'm trying to read information about why they have this ability, and maybe you know a lot. You probably know a lot more about this than me. I haven't even been able to see any like crucial or any coherent things that can explain why they do this or why they're speaking or how they're able to do this. So later on in the conversation, I'm going to be, and maybe I'm really interested in why the parrot of all birds have the ability to speak. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I read a lot of papers about, there was this one study, I forgot who it was, but they actually put the gray parrot in that they were doing this experiment, and they had two people, and I think they had an object. They were trying to see if the bird would say the words necessary to get the object. So they made the bird watch these two people interact, and if the one person would do something, I guess that was positive, the other person would hand them like an object. So the bird was actually seeing these two humans interact, and the bird started using the actual words to obtain the object because they seen the person give the object to the other person. So in my mind, I'm thinking this is my hypothesis here. Maybe it's totally out of whack, but even animals even have the ability to know what they have to say to get what they want. And it's really weird because they have, and it's not like they know what they're saying. They're mimicking. I think it's called a cynicism. I think I'm using that word right. It's a cynicism. So it's like the random utterances of just words. And I want to tie that. Maybe this is like a crazy leap, but I want to tie that to how animals and how humans interact in tribes, because I think that's kind of the root of how people become ideologically possessed, because they use words that necessarily don't have any objective meaning, but they use these arbitrary words to advance themselves through the hierarchy of their tribe and to move up, because you literally you're seeing that happen right now. The rapid just deconstruction of words. So I want to root that to I want to be able to, I guess, anthropomorphize that analogy here, because we see that in the animal kingdom with the gray parrot. The gray parrot has the ability to use words to advance themselves throughout the hierarchy, to gain power, to gain something that they want. So do you think that's like a crazy jump? Is that like an insane leap? I mean, I'm diving into stuff I'm not an expert in. I want to know your opinion about that.
I will admit you lost me a little bit.
I'm sorry.
But and we also covered a lot of stuff just then. I'll
just throw stuff at you and then you organize everything, okay?
Cool. So I'm not super familiar with like the bird language stuff. I know that there is a lot of there's like questions about like what language is and whether animals have language and are because even like chimpanzees might have or might have language sort of deal. And there's questions about, and again, I would need to read a little bit more about this, but there's questions about like, are they just being conditioned to repeat words or like, are they able to use sort of grammar in the way that humans can? And so yeah, I don't know enough about that. I feel like to give a meaningful sort of feedback on that one, but I do, you know, as far as language is something I find interesting, because on one hand, there's a learning element to language, right? So like, we learn, like I learned to speak English, but if I was born in China, like I would have learned to speak Chinese, and has nothing to do with my genetics. But there also seems to be like, there might be some like innate ability that we have to learn language. So it might not be like the language that you learn that's innate, but there might be something maybe about grammar rules. And I don't think that anyone knows the answer to this. Some people have different perspectives. But it does seem like there's something innate. And so it's, I guess one of the questions is like, maybe do animals possess those innate abilities to learn language too? Or do humans even have that? I don't know. But it does seem like miraculous as far as children's ability to learn language when you watch them develop. I don't have any children, but I have two nieces and I've watched them develop. And it seems like they just learn language at this mind-boggling speed. But then when you want to learn as an adult, you lose some of that. It seems like you lose some of that ability. And so it seems like there's something innate that we have as a child that allows us to absorb the language of people around us. And what's interesting too is that children, they'll learn language even if they're not explicitly taught it. So as an adult, like you need to like be like, you'll do like Rosetta Stone, or you'll take courses, like full college courses to learn a language, right? But kids don't take college courses, and they just learn it, and they learn all of these different grammar rules. They know how to use the words correctly and most kids are going to school at some level, but even if they didn't, they would still learn these rules, and they know how to speak just like all the other adults in their community, which I find that really interesting and fascinating. I don't know all the details of it, and I don't know that anyone knows all of the details.
So what kind of interesting things have you found out within, like, specific to animal cognition?
So I'm just starting.
I'm interested in that. Okay.
So I'm just starting. So I haven't done a study to completion where I've collected data or anything like that.
Okay.
But that's kind of where I'm at, and I will hopefully have some of that by the summer.
So what do you think about my crazy like conspiracy theory there? What do you think about that?
Well, I guess I would need to understand it a little bit better.
Where did I lose you? Because I want to verify this with someone who is like, you know, in the field.
You were telling me about a study they did with birds.
Yeah.
Sounds really fascinating. If you have the study, you can send it to me afterwards.
I think it's a pepper bird. Her name was really it was kind of like the Quincy-Mignon thing. Her last name was really difficult. I think her last name was Pepperbird. But yeah, I'll definitely send it to you. Go ahead.
And so you were saying that the bird was using what I would call observational learning, which I think dog, like a lot of different species can do that, where they can observe and they're able to learn things just through observing. So it sounded like the bird was observing humans use language and then was able to use the words in the correct way just from observing. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah. So basically, what my whole thing is the book is about the book is essentially about how people become ideologically possessed. And I want to break this down at a psychological level because I think that's the most useful field to attack that problem. And I think how what so this is basically the tenet of the book. I imagine life as people in tribes because we're just naturally tribal humans. And I think in the root of tribes, it's gonna sound crazy, but it is ideology. The root of tribes is ideology. So when people hear ideology, they might think of like feminism, or they might think of nationalism. They might think of more abstracted, advanced, or articulated human versions of ideology. But that's not how I think of it. I think of ideology as more as in more broad terms, like a rigid, a closed, rigid, non-updating view of the world. And when you think about it, when you think about ideology like that, it makes sense to see in the actual real world where you see people uttering things like, "Oh, destroy the patriarchy," or they'll say these, or from every what is the word? From each according to his ability, to each according to his need. You'll hear these sayings, these weird chants, and when you actually break them down, they don't mean anything. Like kind of like in 1984, when freedom is slavery, and war is peace. Like these weird, like these chants. They're when you break them down, that is if you look at it from a psychological perspective, correct me if I'm wrong, that is the chanting. That is two apes in the wild grunting at each other. That is one group of animals over here and one group of animals over here using non-articulate language, using weaponizing their words to advance themselves throughout the hierarchy. Is that making sense?
It sounds like maybe what we're talking about is when people say these things, and like let me know if this is what you mean. But people say these things and they're using it more as like a cue to indicate what team they're on.
Yeah. So let me be clear. I'm looking at this as humans degenerating to their most primitive instincts. That's how I'm laying it out.
So I have a question though. So is that correct? That's what you're saying. Like people will say these phrases, and it's like the phrase, the real meaning of the phrase is to let people know what side you're on.
Yes, they're cues. Yeah, cues. You use a better word, cues.
Maybe a sign. But so you were talking about people having rigid worldviews, and but not everyone does have a rigid worldview. What about people who have changed their worldview? So for me, like I've had to radically change, or my worldview has radically changed. I think multiple times. And
Yeah,
for me, that was very difficult. I feel like it required a lot of humility to be like, you know what, I think I was wrong about things.
yeah. That's how you step outside of the ideological
So
trap.
you mentioned that you've also changed your worldview a little bit, or at least that's what it seemed like from your tweet.
Yeah, yeah. Drastically a lot.
So to me, I I like people who are like that. Even I don't know if we agree on everything. There's probably things that we disagree on, but I feel like one's ability to like analyze their situation and somehow change their worldview is real fascinating.
Yeah,
Because why is it that some people can do this, but then other people can't do can't do this?
yeah.
I don't know what the difference is. Why are some people? Why does this happen for some people, but not for others?
Yeah.
But you were talking about people having these rigid worldviews, and they're using these like chants as
Well, not everyone. Just people who succumb to ideologies. Those people have rigid worldviews. Not everyone.
I see. Well, so my question was, is that what do you think the difference is between people who change their worldview versus people who are unable to, or how does
Because I
that?
think people who update their worldview, they can no longer operate with it within this hierarchy. I think Jordan also he quoted a study when these people in the safari, I think it was somewhere in Africa, they were watching these zebras, and I think you probably know about this, and they were trying to remember which zebra they were studying. And when they would look up, and then when they look down and write notes, they would look up, and then they would lose the zebra. They would forget which one it was. So they started marking the zebras with a red stripe on, like, I think it was like on their rear end or something. They started marking the zebras with red paint. And once they did that, every zebra that had a red stripe, they got killed by the lions.
Okay.
So if you look at it that way, when you become an individual, you automatically become a target. You become differentiated from your tribe. And it can be something as little as having a red mark, because you become a threat. And not a threat from within the tribe, but you just become a threat generally, because you can be differentiated from your actual tribe, and you are automatically a threat. So I think when we look at it like that, when we look at it strictly from like a what is this called that I'm doing? Like looking at it from a, what is it called when you compare animals to humans? Is that called anthropomorphization? Is that the proper word?
That word would be, as I understand it, that word would be like you're giving the animals human qualities.
Human properties. Okay.
I think that what you're talking about is just like,
there is no word for it.
Yeah, I think it's just comparative.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So if you're just looking at mammals, probably just mammalian people. Period. When you look at it like that, I think when you see this when people inside a group have a slightly different opinion, they automatically get ostracized. They get taken out because they can no longer fit. They can no longer fit within this group that have the red mark. So they're gonna, they have right from the outside. They can no longer operate within this group. So I think how people step outside of that is that red mark. That metaphorically is your own unique identity. You no longer have these stripes. You're no longer going to go on. You can no longer be in this group. Once you mark yourself with the red stripe, you are a unique individual, and that comes with it. And here's how I want to piece it together, because this is why people stay within the damn group. Because once you put a mark on yourself, you're automatically a target. Well, why Ryan said something slightly different from what everyone else said? So let's interrogate him until we find out why he said it. What's his motives? Why is he doing that? Why does he have a red stripe? Does he think he's something because he has a red stripe? It makes sense to be within this tribe, because if you mark yourself, if you make yourself a target, I mean, you can look at this evolutionary. You can look at this through an evolutionary lens. It makes sense that's why we were in tribes. It makes sense because we're preserving our life. We're preserving our quality of being. And once you step outside those, you are literally risking death stepping outside of your tribes. But that's what we did, and you know that from a developmental lens. You know, once you become an individual, that comes with a great responsibility. And I think, well, that's pretty much it. So you can tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, so I took a course called behavioral ecology, which I think
cool.
I think you'd like the subject. And I can recommend a book if you're interested.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
I actually really like textbooks, because I am not a good reader. Despite being a PhD student, I am not a great reader. But I like textbooks because they are broken down into like simple subheadings, and like important words are bolded, and so I find them easier to read and consume the information that's in there. But anyways, so afterwards, so I'll get old textbooks sometimes on subjects that I want to know more about, because you can get them for pretty cheap. And I'm pretty sure you can get this behavioral ecology one for pretty cheap. But basically,
cheap for a college textbook.
You can get it for like $5.
Okay, hey, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah. So it depends on the books, but sometimes you'll just get you can get a used version, or you can get an old edition.
Yeah,
sometimes they like constantly update the editions, and they'll be like $200. But if you get a 3-year-old edition or a 3 editions back, it'll be really cheap usually. And the content is usually almost exactly the same.
Behavioral ecology.
Yeah, so there might be more than one book. I don't have the book with me right now to give you the exact name, as far as the book that was used in my course. But it basically, the idea is like looking at the environment, the animals and their behavior, and how like it's shaping their behavior.
Right.
I hope I got the definition right there.
You did.
So it talks about a whole bunch of different behaviors that we see in animals, but some of it is social behavior, like what drives social behavior and what drives like cows to form herds and stuff.
Yeah.
And it seems like if I don't remember all of the details, but there's kind of like this sort of cost benefit analysis sort of thing that happens. Like, are you in the group benefiting by being a group, or are you better off being alone, sort of deal? And so I feel like you might be interested in looking into those chapters. But I'll send the information to you because it kind of talks about like what you were saying with the herd of animals, and I do think that there's some analogies there. There's something to be drawn as far as social behavior. I think similar phenomena are going on in humans.
I want to switch gears here. I want to get into I want to go back to the Jehovah talk.
Sure.
So if you can tell us what I vaguely
know what that is. I know it's a denomination of Christianity, but if you can explain to people what Jehovah Witnesses are and why they knock on people's doors, that would be beneficial.
Sure. So let's see, I guess we could start with like a mini history lesson. So their founder is Charles Taze Russell. And actually, I don't know, I don't remember offhand all the details, but it kind of started back in the 1870s, I believe. But originally, they kind of consider themselves to just be Bible students. And so they kind of rejected the idea that they rejected giving themselves like a name like other religions had, and they were like, no, we're just like true Christians. We're just Christians.
Are they an outgrowth of the Jesuits? Did you happen to know that?
I was researching that the other day.
I don't know much about Jesuits because that's, I mean, like Jesuit like monks. I'm not sure.
Those were the it was an outgrowth of. It started in the Middle Ages and throughout throughout
the 16th century. There were Jesuit says the tribe of Jesus. It was like the team of.
Okay.
I forgot the translation, but it's something similar, something
analogous to the Jehovah Witness. So I'm guessing that's like an outgrowth of that.
So I don't know what the relationship to that is because I don't know enough about it. But they are like I would say that they are an outgrowth of a group that was called the Millerites. And their kind of leader was maybe Joseph Miller or something like that. The last name is definitely Miller. I don't know his first name. But they come from them. And I believe the other religions that are kind of related are Seventh-day Adventists. And so I think
I've heard of that.
Yeah, if you were to draw like the family tree, I think that the Millerites would be like the parent religion, and they kind of became maybe Jehovah's Witnesses and Seventh-day Adventists. Of course.
So what are the Jehovah Witnesses what is it?
So, let's see. So as far as like their core beliefs, okay.
And how does that? Is that like just like another denomination, like a Baptist, or are there like just fill me in.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. So yeah, so I think that some people might disagree on my description of how they came to be just then, but yeah, so I guess they would be like a denomination of Christianity, but they believe that they are the only like true denomination of Christianity, which I think is pretty common for different Christian religions. But they believe that they are the only true religion. They believe that they are a restoration of the first century Christians. They believe some of the, I guess, common beliefs that I get asked about is that they believe that there are only 144,000 people that will go to heaven to reign with Jesus as kings and priests over
like selected people, or that's like their maximum occupancy in heaven.
That would be like the maximum occupancy of heaven sort of deal, where these people have been.
I think it's time for some renovation up there. I don't think that's enough people.
Yeah, no, it's like I think the idea is more that
because COVID and everything is probably
they've got like room size. You can only be so many people per room. No.
You think God will stop COVID in heaven? Jesus Christ.
I think the idea is that they have been like chosen for some reason as individuals because of some unknown qualities or something, that they've been chosen by God to rule in heaven with Jesus, and then everyone else. So they believe that everyone who has lived before now will be resurrected on earth, and be given like a second chance to please God if they didn't have a chance to know God before. And they believed that we are living in what they call the time of the end. So it's like the end of the current system, which is ruled by Satan. They believe that what's going to happen imminently is that we will have this great tribulation where the world's governments are going to turn on religion and start trying to destroy religion.
That's
but
definitely happened.
Particularly them, though. And they believe that that will be the start of Armageddon, where the governments are going to try to destroy them, but God's not going to allow it. So God's going to step in and destroy all of the governments and all of the evil people. So they teach if you're destroyed during that event, then you will not be resurrected on earth. But basically everyone else, so only they will survive that and have a chance to live on, as far as the people that are currently alive. But everyone who has died in the past will get like a second chance. At least that's my understanding of what they believe. So does that give you a gist of it? I mean, they're also known for not celebrating holidays. They're known for not celebrating holidays. They're known for not being politically involved. So they're opposed to voting, having any political opinions, or taking political stances. They're opposed to holding office. So believe it or not, I've never saluted the flag before. I've never said the national anthem. I've never said the Pledge of Allegiance.
Wow.
And when I left the religion back in
far right terrorist, you.
I know, I know, right? What was I going to say? So when I left the religion, if you had asked me whether Obama was left or right or Democrat or Republican, I wouldn't have known.
So you weren't even allowed to look into politics at all?
I mean, you probably, I mean, you could have. They would have been discouraged, but it wasn't the focus of my life. I didn't know anything about it, and I didn't really care at the time. But yeah, if you had asked me like about who's abortion, what side are people on, I would have had no clue. Which one's red, which one's blue, I would have had no clue. So it was quite a new world to learn about. And that was back in like 2015, 2016, where I was like learning about politics for the first time. But yeah, so I think that's what they're mostly known for, is kind of their anti-politics, anti-nationalism, anti-holiday sort of stances as well.
So I have a bunch of questions about that. So as far as this whole 144,000 people,
yeah.
Well, 144,000 people will only make it into heaven.
Correct. Yeah.
When I forgot your response, but was that a pre-selected 144,000, or that's just the occupancy? That's the occupancy of heaven.
That's like a pre-selected amount, because in the book of Revelation it says that there are 100. I think it says that there. It's been a while, but it says that there's 144,000 on Mount Zion with Jesus, or something like that. And so that's that's what that number is coming from. It's from the book of Revelation.
But did it ever say, like, where did they get that and jump from? There will only be 144,000 people that will be saved. Where did they get that jump?
So they wouldn't say that the only people that would be saved. They would say that they're only the people that are going to be resurrected to heaven. And I believe the idea is, so their concept is that that God is going to, or they believe that in 1914, God appointed Jesus king of his kingdom.
In 1914.
In 1914, yeah. So
okay.
There's math that they do. To get to 1914. But
start of World War One. That's pretty weird.
It is. But they believe that God appointed. So they have logic. There's like reasons that I don't know all the details anymore. Right? We could go on. We could go into some of the details, but it'll take us forever. But they have explanation for those things. But they believe.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, it's out there. But they believe that Jesus started reigning invisible in heaven in 1914, and that there's just going to be this sort of period of time where Satan is allowed to just destroy the earth before he takes action, and that there's like this 104, and so the kingdom of God, like Jesus's kingdom that he's ruling over, is in heaven invisibly, and that only 144,000 have been selected to reign with him in heaven. And I think in the book of Revelations, it says that like Jesus, the Lamb of God, is reigning with 144,000 on Mount Zion or something like that. And so it's like Zion is supposed to be symbolic of God's kingdom. And so that's where they're getting that from, is that there's the select group that's reigning with him, and God's kingdom is invisible and in heaven, so they will be reigning invisible and in heaven with him, is what I recall.
So I know you're not in this anymore.
I just have a question.
It's been a while since I've had to defend.
This is Romans 10:13. Whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. So, from a former Jehovah Witness, like what would they say about Romans? Whoever calls on the Lord's name shall be saved.
So, you're really testing my Bible knowledge. So there's the Old Testament, and
do they reject that?
What was that?
Do they accept both testaments?
They do, but I'm going to talk about like their use of God's name. So there's the Old Testament that uses the Tetragrammaton, which Jehovah's Witnesses translate as Jehovah. Sometimes it might be translated as Yahweh, or in some Bibles it might say Lord with like capital Lord. But that's only true in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, I think it does use the Greek word for Lord, which might be Adonai, but I'm not certain about that off the top of my head. But what they've done in their Bible is anytime there is a Greek, in the New Testament, anytime there is a scripture that is quoting or like referencing a scripture in the Old Testament, and they're using the term Lord or like God, but the Old Testament has the Tetragrammaton, then they will put God's name, they will put Jehovah in that spot in the New Testament. So I believe that scripture in the Jehovah's Witness Bible says anyone who calls in the name of Jehovah. I'm not sure if that helps answer your question or not, but I think that theirs will say Jehovah there where it says Lord.
So is the Lord and Jehovah the same thing?
So I believe Lord is used in different ways in the Bible, but when usually in other translations of the Bible, or some of them, when you see Lord written in all capital letters, the Jehovah's Witness version, they'll have Jehovah there instead. So, but I think Jesus is also called Lord sometimes, and I think some of like the kings and stuff might be called Lord sometimes as well. Like I think like maybe Abraham might be called Lord as well. But like there's specific instances. There's even scriptures where it's somewhat ambiguous as far as who the Lord is that they are referring to, I believe.
So not to be disrespectful, but I'm not really guessing how you got turned away from this, because just from what I know, and from what you're saying, there's a lot of like internal confliction here. So, if you don't mind, explain to us what was it that turned you away from all this? Like what was it? Was it like a one day, or was it like a build up? Or
it wasn't one day. It wasn't one day.
Were you like fully committed to this?
So I was a ministerial servant, so that would be like kind of like a deacon maybe in the Catholic Church. I was also what they called a pioneer, which is which they describe as a full-time minister. So all
Witnesses, look at you.
Right? So all of Jehovah's Witnesses are expected to go out preaching at some level every week. But then
that explains
Yes, preaching. But pioneers go out preaching for 70 hours a month.
Jeez.
With like time I know. There's like this
no pun intended.
Yeah. And then I also moved to a Spanish language congregation. So I was doing that in Spanish. So I was pretty involved. But your question, so I would say that it's a little bit more of a transition. I had felt like something was wrong with me, or something that was wrong with my life. And I didn't really understand it. I didn't know how to, like, I just didn't know, like, I can go back, I can look back now and give description and understanding, but at the time I didn't know. I was searching for answers.
Yeah.
And I was always told that religion was the answer. And I was pretty miserable. I was very depressed in the religion. I felt like I didn't belong. And I would also have questions where I felt like things didn't quite make sense.
And were those questions encouraged? Like, were those conversations encouraged to have, or were they kind of just
they would
straight
say
off to the side?
They would say that they encourage those conversations, but there's. And I wish I could remember some of some of the questions that I had, because there are a variety of them. Just kind of one that popped into my head right now is that they say there's a scripture that says that with wicked things. Oh, I apologize. With wicked things, God cannot be tried. And I forget exactly how it goes, but it's something like that. With wicked things, God cannot be tried, nor does he himself try anyone. Does that sound familiar to you? But then there's scriptures in the Bible where it sounds like God is saying wicked things, wicked things, or God is seeming to try people. And so
God will not try you. What do they mean by that?
Well, we can go into that, but I mean, or we could try, but I don't remember the witnesses teaching necessarily on all of that anymore.
Yeah,
but I had questions about that.
He definitely tried Abraham with his son.
But so a whole bunch of times, right? But then there's also scripture that's saying that God doesn't do that. So, but then how is he not trying Abraham or Job or I think even maybe Saul, where it says that God caused like a wicked spirit to come over Saul. And so I'm like, well, why did God cause this wicked spirit? I thought God wasn't doing that sort of thing. And so there was a question. So I had questions like that. The answer I was given to that question is that, well, sometimes in the Bible, it'll say that God did something wicked, but really what it means is that God just allowed something wicked to happen. And I was like, why not say allowed? Why not say allowed then? But
do you remember reading? Do you remember which versions of the Bible you guys were reading? Because I try to stay to one. I don't like getting into like the new translations or like the ending. I kind of stay to the King James version, because that's probably that's like the most accurate one that I can interpret.
You feel like the King James one uses like Old English.
Right? Yeah.
And so I feel like that can be challenging sometimes.
Because once you get into the newer ones, when you get into these, I think that's how you get into these kind of. I mean, there's a struggle for interpretation no matter what version you're reading.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think once you get more into the modern way, I think that it becomes problematic, because you have people who are kind of older who are looking straight to the King James version, but then you have the newer versions that use more. It's more watered down. Like I was watching. I don't know if his name is. You ever heard of Mike Todd?
No, I don't think so.
He's like a youth pastor, and I'm not going to say too much about him. But I'm not a huge fan of him, because he's just kind of too worldly for me. But he was reading this one scripture, and I forgot what it was. And it was a ES. I forgot what in the world does ESJ stand for? Anyway, it was one of the newer ones, and it was completely out of whack. He was basically saying that you don't go to hell for sinning, you go to hell for not believing. And I was like, and that when he said that kind of caused a whole bunch of controversy. Like, what? You don't go to hell for sin? Like, what are you talking about, dude? And so I looked it up in the actual Bible, and it was something completely different. But I looked at what interpretation he was reading from, and it was from one of the newer ones. So that was kind of more like in the beginning of where I was I'm really starting to look, because I didn't really get like really into like God like that within the past like 3 years, I would say. So
there's some books I can recommend to you if you like looking at.
Go ahead, man.
Stuff. There's a book that I had. I believe it's called. It's like the Hebrew Greek Interlinear Bible.
Cool.
I believe it has the King James text, but then above and below it has the Hebrew and the Greek.
I love that.
And then there's another book, which I believe is called Strong's Concordance. And It's been a while since I looked at this stuff, but one of them is called Strong's Concordance, and I believe the other one is called the Interlinear Bible. And the Interlinear Bible have a number associated with each of the words, and then the Strong's Concordance will have it's like a dictionary of all of the words in the Bible. Wow. And so if you're like reading a scripture, and you'll be able to see what Greek word is being used, and it'll have a number, then you can go into the concordance and find that number and be like, well, this is the Greek word and this is what it means and stuff like that. So I feel like that might be something that you find useful. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was real cool.
Yeah.
Another thing that I found interesting was there's websites where you can like compare a bunch of different versions of the text.
Meta-analysis of the Bible.
Yeah. So you can kind of be like, well, how do the other translations translate this particular text? Because I agree, it's a bit of an art form, and I do think that there is the potential for people to kind of translate it in a way that suits their beliefs. To open it up to whatever. With art, really, translation really is a bit of an art where there's subjectivity there, and so.
But there are some verses where like you have to do more work to contort them. Because some are just out, like Romans 10:13. Who calls him no Lord shall be saved. Like there really is no, you don't have to be a scholar to interpret that one.
I would say that most texts probably have that very similar. I don't know. I mean, so when I was a witness, I had a bunch of different versions of the Bible, and I had them in different languages sometimes too. But yeah, I found that interesting sometimes to look at other versions. Sometimes there are certain scriptures and parts of the Bible that are like contested as far as whether they should be there or not. And so some versions like don't even have certain sections or even whole books. Like the King James version doesn't have 5, 6, 7 books that the Catholic.
Yeah, there was a lot. There was, I think one of the ones I was looking at was a book of oh my God, I'm gonna forget it. It's the book of Elijah. I think it's a book of Elijah or something after. I forgot. But I want to ask you, because we're kind of begging the question here. So I think I just used that term wrong. I think you said you hate when people use that term wrong. I think I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Ryan.
I don't hate when you use that word. It doesn't. You're fine.
I think so. Do you think all this so for someone that maybe doesn't know any of this stuff, I think. So with all this ambiguity and all this confusion, do you think this is what drives people away? I'm not doing anything. I don't want anything to do with that. Do you think someone would listen to the last 10 minutes of us talking about all this stuff and then they're just they have their hands up F that. I'm just not even going to pay attention to it. Do you think that's kind of what drove you away? Just all the confusion and just the nonstop.
No. Because I like analyzing things. I really enjoy that stuff, and I feel that. I probably was interested at a level of analysis that other people were not typically interested in, which is might be interesting.
Most people, man. Yeah.
Are people who don't have the energy or the interest to have that level of analysis on certain things. I think that some people maybe have a certain interest level of analysis on certain topics, but not others. But I do think there's a lot of people that do have an interest in having sort of intellectual conversations, but it depends on the subject. But that's not what drove me away. But so I guess I was just very unhappy, and I felt very, very unfulfilled. And the answer was always read the Bible more, and study the Bible more, pray more. Go out preaching.
And that didn't do it for you. I want to if you don't mind, I want to know what. Why were you unhappy? Why were you unfulfilled? Why, when they told you to search, why wasn't that answer suffice for you? Why?
So why is that not sufficient for me, but maybe it's sufficient for other people? I don't know the answer to that. But it certainly wasn't, and I was very, very unhappy. And sort of so I was very unhappy. And the sort of the ending of my story is that the witnesses encourage you to talk to the elders about your problems and stuff. And so I started to talk to them, but then I felt like they were sort of punishing me for talking to them about my depression or my anxiety or whatever, which again, I didn't understand at all, especially not at the time. I had no idea. And they had told me to go see they told me I was mentally ill and I needed to go see a therapist. And, that was kind of not going into all of the details. I went to go see a therapist, and she was encouraging me to try to find friends outside of the congregation. But witnesses believe that you shouldn't be friends with people outside of the religion. And so,
Hold on. That you can't just like casually say that. They said what?
so witnesses don't believe in having friends outside of the religion.
Oh my god.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my god.
So yeah, so like growing up, I didn't have any friends at school, or like you're not supposed to be friends with coworkers or anything like that. Yeah, it's funny because
Why? I don't understand that. I don't understand that at all. What does a friend mean? Like, what is that? What constitutes as a friend? You can't talk to them.
yeah. So the simple version would be that yeah, you shouldn't be spending time with them outside of essential functions.
Wow.
Yeah. So they would say that bad associations spoil useful habits. And so basically the idea is that by becoming friends of them, they're going to corrupt you. Um, so, so yeah, so like you wouldn't be able, you would be discouraged from like going.
So how would you recruit more people to be Jehovah Witnesses if you're not allowed to speak to anyone that's not a Jehovah Witness?
Well, so you're allowed to speak to them if you're preaching to them. But I think a lot of their numbers come from them just having more children. I think that's I don't know the details, but I think that's where a lot of it comes from. It's just them having children. There are people who are like converts, but I don't think that I think that the growth primarily comes from them having children is what I think.
So you weren't allowed to speak with anyone as a kid.
Well, like play with other people, yeah. Like I wouldn't have been allowed to like go to a birthday party or like go hang over people's friends. Yeah. Mm-mm.
You couldn't have friends. Like you couldn't have friends over.
No, we didn't do anything like that. I was discouraged.
And no holidays, no Christmas or anything.
Mhm.
Oh my god, man!
Yeah. Um. So, but anyways,
Are we doing like a disservice to Jehovah? Like, is this that just your congregation was just weird, or is this the whole entire thing?
No, it's not. No, it's not just my congregation. So you need to interview a different ex-witness and see if they say the same things.
Yeah, the next one we'll have both of you on and debate.
I'll find somebody, but no,
But he won't because I'm not a Jehovah Witness, so he won't talk to me. How convenient.
It would be hard to find an actual witness that would be willing to talk to you, but you could try. You could certainly try.
I mean, but how kind of arrogant is that? Like you can't talk to me, but I can preach to you. Like I don't understand how that makes any sense.
I agree. I feel like that's a criticism of Islam sometimes too, because I'm not as knowledgeable about Islam, but I feel like a similar phenomenon will happen where like, well, we can marry your women and they can convert to Islam, but you can't marry our women and our women can't convert to Christianity, sort of deal. And so I've seen people complain about that phenomenon going on in different parts of the world. But witnesses are very much the same way. Very much the same way.
That's why I'm not really I'm starting to change my viewpoint on all these denominations and all these different tribes that are kind of like outgrowths of, and even this is going to sound even more weird, but even Christianity as a whole. Because if you think about it, all these denominations all they are essentially just religious cults. Like if you look at how if you look at the Bible, I mean the church that I'm online attending is his name is Pastor Gino Jennings. You probably have no idea who that is, but he's a really good preacher. He literally I don't know. It's on the shelf over there. He literally takes that Bible and he reads it. So that's what he does. He doesn't do any other. Well, he interprets it. He does his whole sermon thing, but he just reads the words, and that's and I think that is what. And he says throughout his sermons, like Baptists and Apostles and the. I used to go to a Presbyterian church. I never even knew what that was. Like I used to go to a.
I don't know what it is either.
Yeah, like all these and it's probably like a billion others. Like none of these words were ever none of those teams were ever in the Bible at all. Like God never said the Presbyterians will win. Like he never that never was a part of any of that.
I think the word Presbyterian I think is in the Bible actually.
It is.
I think I could be wrong, but I think the word Presbyterian might be the word that's translated elder. I think in the Greek
Elder.
scriptures. I'm pretty sure the word Presbyterian is in the Greek scriptures. Yeah, and I think it's in the Jehovah's Witness Bible. I think it's translated elders, and I think it's in the book of Timothy, but I'm not certain. Don't quote me on that.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll definitely search that because I'm most likely I'm wrong. I'm no theologian or anything, but I guess it's an all. I just don't really agree with all the denominations. I think that
Also, some of these denominations, they didn't give themselves the name. They were called that. That's a common phenomenon.
then what do you mean they were called that?
Like some religions, like they like broke off of the Catholic Church or of the Church of England or whatever, and other people called them a name,
Yeah.
and that's the name that they just like stuck with them after a while. And so I don't know the history of like Presbyterian in particular as far as them, but that is true of some religious groups. And I don't know all the details, but some of them are.
I faintly know, like during the Reformation, when people were breaking away from the Roman Catholic Church and people like Martin Luther and that whole thing emerged. But if you and the people in the Roman Catholic Church, there were this whole indulgence thing, and that's just sick. Would you want to do? Is that something that occurs in Jehovah Witnesses, like indulgences? Like, have you ever seen that?
Forget what is that?
That's basically when people paid to have their sins taken away. That's never encountered.
Please don't do that.
Yeah, but all that corruption was going on within the church, so that's what kind of spread. I think that's the beginning when people started spreading out, and then you started getting black churches and the Baptists and the bishops and all that stuff. I just don't like. I don't think that's. I don't know. I just don't agree with all these different teams. I think I'm just a Christian. I think I identify as one. I just think that as long as you agree with the core tenets of the Bible and the commandments, I think that's it. I don't think that there doesn't need to be all these different teams and stuff and all these. I mean, that goes back to our tribal thing again. I mean, that goes back. I mean, people we just cannot resist the urge to get in tribes and to get in teams. And I think once we start doing that, it just defeats the whole purpose. Because I mean, I know when you're in a Baptist church, they're not like dropping diss tracks towards the Presbyterians. I know they're not at war with each other, but I just don't see the utility of calling myself. Well, why are you adding on all these other terms? Like, I'm a Presbyterian, or I'm a Baptist, or I'm a whateverist. Like, I just don't understand. I don't understand.
I do
the
think
meaning of all this.
a lot of so the things that you're saying, a lot of witnesses would sound exactly like what you're saying. Like they would say the exact same things.
Yeah.
A lot of religious groups, when they start with that exact same perspective where they're like, well, we're just Christians, because that's what Jehovah's Witnesses did. Other people were calling them Russellites because that's like their preacher at the time was Charles Taze Russell, and so other people were calling them Russellites, but they were like, no, we're just Christians, we're just following the Bible. And I've heard like earlier you were saying that your pastor like reads directly from the Bible, but like witnesses say those exact same things.
Yeah. And so do you? And when did the Jehovah Witness? When did that start?
Like it, usually it's described as starting in like the 1870s, but they didn't start calling themselves Jehovah's Witnesses until the 1930s.
Right. So you said that some of the things that I was saying were similar talking points of the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah,
so,
especially back then.
But don't you see the proclivity for people to say, "Oh, well, we all think this way. Let's call ourselves this," and to become a group?
But I think
I don't understand that when you make that jump. I think that is where the problem lies.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I do think it's a trend, because even one of my former coworkers, he was saying the same thing. He was like, "Oh, well, I'm just Christian." Like the group I go to, they're just
George Carlin.
So I've heard of him, but I don't know much about him.
Oh my God, he said, I think it's what I'm really gonna screw up this
recently, right?
Yeah. He was. I mean, this dude is just funny. I think I'm gonna screw up this quote. He said don't reject anything with a name. And he said that like this is so powerful, because anything, once you start naming and making teams, that is just when. I'm not trying to straw man any of this, but I mean that's literally when things start getting tribal, when you put a name on it. Like, and this is something that Gino Jennings argues. He says that Christianity, that term, is a made up term, because he says that in the Bible it just says be holy and follow these commandments and do what Jesus in Christ says. Like that. That's what he said. That's his argument. I haven't looked into the Bible at all to critique that, but it's something that I can understand. Like there isn't so from his point of view, there really isn't a name. It's just holy. That's what the religion. It's not even a religion. It's just God's word. Be holy and do this. That is what it is. And I'm not trying to critique why. I'm not trying to like offend anyone here, but even like I don't agree with with the Catholics and the whole Pope stuff. Like, and he's apparently an infallible. Like, no, you're not. Like I don't understand. This is just a lot of things I don't understand about this. So when you were sad and going through this whole thing where you were starting to leave, how did that feel, being like slowly starting to break away from that congregation? Like, how did that feel? Were they trying to get you back in, or were they or did you feel as if they were naturally kind of pushing you out? Like, how did that feel?
So I can tell you that it did not feel good. So what happened was, I went.
And do you regret it? That's the second question. Do you regret leaving?
I don't regret leaving.
Okay.
But the story gets darker before it gets better. So I went to the elders and I was like, well, the therapist is telling me I need to make friends outside of the religion.
And then they said no, stay here.
And they were like, well, the therapist is just trying to get you to stop serving God. What you need is medications. And so I went back to my therapist. Like I had no spine. Like I am embarrassed and ashamed to say like how much I had no spine. I had no spine though.
So they told you the therapist was trying to get you away from God.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And so I went back to the therapist and I was like, well, the elders in my congregation say that I need to take medication. Which is like oh my god. And so they gave me Prozac, and which, I mean, like people get put on Prozac all the time.
Who prescribed you? Is that something you need a prescription for? Not prescription. That's something you need to be diagnosed with to use, or that over-the-counter drug.
Prozac is like an antidepressant, and it's real common for them to prescribe it. But what's concerning to me is that like. You had
they said you needed that.
When I told them, the elders told me, I told them that the elders told me I should take medications.
I'm saying, where did they get the standing? Where did they get the credibility to diagnose you with what antidepressants you needed?
So getting my medication isn't necessarily a diagnosis. But yeah, they did. They'll like if you go to the doctor and say that you're depressed, like they'll give you a Prozac.
Well, yeah, doctor is. I mean, I trust that person.
The place that I was going to was like a counseling center that also they also did that as well.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And so, but they gave that to me, but it's kind of horrifying to think of it. Like somebody came in and said that the elders at their church told them they should take medication, and they were just like, okay. And so, but the thing is, I took that and I felt so sick, like almost immediately. Like it just felt like I was a zombie. Like I felt like I had no emotions anymore, and I just didn't care about anything. And so, I was a pioneer. That I was supposed to be preaching 70 hours a month. I was a ministerial servant. I was in a Spanish congregation. I was at all of their meetings. They have 5 meetings a week. And not only was I there, but I'd be like the person to like unlocked the building to the church when we had our meetings. And I'd be like the last person to leave. So I was very involved. I started taking this and I basically just stopped everything. And so even though it was like this like horrific, confusing time for me, tumultuous, confusing time, in a way, my stopping attending the meetings is what helped me leave. And so I stopped attending meetings and I stopped preaching like pretty suddenly, and it seemed like no one cared. that I even existed. And so it's like, like I thought that you people were my family and like my friends. And here I am, like I feel like I'm suffering and no one seems to care. Like no one's contacted me. No one cared to check in on me and be like, hey, we haven't seen you. And so basically they started to soft shun me because I wasn't attending meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was told that, what did I say? I was told some pretty horrific things by people. One person told me that the devil was twisting my thoughts. Another person told me that basically they were punishing me and that I need to attend meetings if I want help. And I was like, well, I've been attending meetings my entire life, and I was never happy then. Um, and so I was taking the medication for not long, really, like maybe 3 4 months, and then the elders called me in for a meeting, and I was like, oh, like finally they're gonna like try to be supportive or helpful or something. Um, and I went into the meeting, and I think this might have been 2 meetings actually, but I went in for the meeting and they told
Here's
me
some more drugs.
what was that?
And here's some more drugs.
Yeah, no. So one of the meetings they told me that I was like a schizophrenic refusing medications, and I was like, what? What? I was like, I'm sick because I'm taking these medications that you told me I should take. And they were like, oh, they're just like vitamins. So you got to take your vitamins. I'm like, no, they're not like vitamins. And so they told me, so they like stripped me of my positions. They told me, like,
Sorry.
yeah, no, it's okay. So they told me that, what was I going to say? Oh, they told me that I was being removed from my positions as like as a ministerial servant, and
Yeah.
which was devastating to me. I cried because this was my entire life. This
Yeah.
was my everything. Um, and so, but at that last meeting I attended with them, and they were telling me that I was like a schizophrenic, and I was like, no, I am done. I am done with this BS. And so I left that meeting, which was probably, and when I say meeting, it's like one of you and two of them in like a closed small room. So it's almost like an interrogation that they do with people. And so it's like a scary environment.
Jesus Christ, man. All these people.
Yeah. And so I left that, and I that was back, I think, in August of 2014, and I never went back.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, exactly. And so I stopped taking the medications, which if anyone is ever on SSRIs, do not stop taking them suddenly.
Yeah.
Which is not like, all of my emotions just came back like extremely intense. And I was experiencing like anger and rage like I had never felt in my life. I had never felt emotions that intense before, especially not like the intensity of the anger. And yeah, and then there was like this whole year that went by after that where I kind of didn't know who I was. I didn't know what to believe. Like I never had a chance to develop a personal, like as an individual. I never had a chance to develop autonomy. I never had a chance to develop like, what are my interests and who am I and what do I like? Like my life was just religion. And I think that's kind of what was making me so depressed, is I didn't have any of that. It was just religion was just my life, you know? And so I was very depressed and confused for almost maybe almost a whole year. And then I read this article by a woman named Valerie Chirico, who I think is, I'm not sure if she's a psychologist or a therapist or something, but she was talking about narcissism and narcissistic religions and narcissistic religious leaders and religious trauma. And I was like, holy cow, this describes my experience exactly. And then it was kind of, it felt like in a moment I had been collecting all of these pieces all of my life, and it felt like suddenly like all the pieces went together and like my whole life made sense. Yeah. But it wasn't until that point that I realized I was even collecting all the pieces. Like I feel like along the way I was just like collecting like hints and clues and pieces, but I didn't know how they fit together. I didn't know I was supposed to put them together. And after I read the article, it just felt like everything made sense suddenly. And it was from there that I started to feel better about myself. It's been a long road. But I started to feel better myself. I started to feel less depressed. And that happened in like maybe October of 2015. And then in December of 2015, I wrote a letter to the Jehovah's Witness organization saying, I'm not interested. I consider my baptism to be invalid because of this is coercion. don't come to my house. I sent them a no trespassing order. I was like, don't call me, don't email me, don't mail me things, don't knock on my door. And they've never contacted me since. Um, and then that spring, so that was at the end of December, I sent that letter. And then in February, maybe January even, I started to go back to college. So that brings our whole story kind of full circle.
Wow.
Back to the college.
Jesus Christ, man.
College. And so when I was in this period of like, I don't know who I am, like, what am I? What do I believe? Like, I still believed the religion for a long time. And I was like, well, it's just these particular people that are wrong. Um, but then as I started to try to understand myself, which was difficult, and again, a long, arduous journey. One of the things I kind of dawned on was like, I really like psychology. That's something that I was passionate in. And I remember people asking me, what do you want to do? And I said I wanted to be a psychologist. And it was like, no, you need to be an elder. You need to be a pioneer. And I remember a very specific conversation I had with someone else who was around my age. And we were discussing this. I said, I want to be a psychologist. And she was like, you can't be a psychologist, right? And I was like, oh,
what are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to make a living for yourself as a Jehovah Witness? What are you supposed to do? Were you getting paid to do that?
No, they're very poor. They are among the poorest and least educated religious group as far as like demographics. Yeah, so sometimes they'll be okay with people going to college if your goal is so that you can make more money to give to them and to dedicate more time to give to them. If going to college allows you to get a job that will allow you to go out preaching full time, then that's kind of okay. So, and if you're going to college for something that's not going to challenge your beliefs. So for some reason, like it seems like for nursing seemed to be more acceptable. But there's a kind of a joke that witnesses are like window washers, and they'll often depict them like doing cleaning jobs. My grandfather had a cleaning company where they would clean banks and stuff. And so they usually have these like low level manual labor jobs. That's real common. And they tend to be very poor. Obviously there are exceptions, but that's like the general rule is they are very poor. Yeah. So, but yeah, so I was like, you know what? I think I like psychology and I want to go to school to be able to help other people who are like me. Originally, when I went back, I was shooting to be, I kind of was on track to become a therapist or a clinical psychologist. But after, when I left, I changed jobs. And I was doing a residential counselor job. So I worked with people with mental health and addiction for like 5 years. And I was like, I don't know that this is what I want to do I don't mind doing it, but I don't know if I want to do this long term. And so that's kind of how I shifted a little bit to doing the more research oriented stuff as opposed to the applied psychology. But yeah, so that kind of wraps us back to the beginning of our conversation a little bit. But that's the gist of it. Yeah.
Oh my God. I don't even know where to begin with the Jesus, man. So you're in this group. You weren't allowed to have any friends growing up. No holidays. When you went to your congregation for solace, they prescribed you drugs. When you tried to vocalize.
The congregation didn't prescribe me medications, but they were like, well, you need to take medications, sort of deal.
Well, yeah. Well, they suggested that you take drugs to deal with the conflict that you had because of them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Then you left to get a therapist, and then she told you that you need to basically get the hell out of there. Then you went back to them.
Didn't say that. She didn't say it like that, but she was just like, you need to find people who.
I think we can probably she's not going to tell you that.
Yeah, no, exactly.
She was basically telling you to get the hell out of there. And then when you went back to them and told them that your therapist said that I need to find other people, they said they told you no, and then they told you you're being a schizophrenic. Then a couple. They
didn't say I was a schizophrenic. They compared me.
Yeah, they said you were being a schizophrenic.
It wasn't quite so direct. It was more about a passive sort of thing. But yeah.
Mm. And then after that, you took those drugs. Then you completely lost all your emotion.
All my motivation to like just do anything. I felt completely dead. Yeah. It was bad.
And then you started to break away, and they told you that from the medication they suggested you take, and through all that agony you were going through, on top of that, they told you was because you weren't basically because you weren't dedicated to being with them enough.
Absolutely, yeah. They also told me that I was spiritually sick. I had spiritual sickness, which is like they consider people who question them or who leave to be mentally ill. So like that's like a belief that they have. There's no reason that you would question or leave the religion unless you were mentally ill.
Oh my God, man! I don't even know what to say. I'm gonna speak since I don't understand.
Cool. That's cool. It's cool.
I mean, when you told me that you had this story, I did not think of it anything like this. I thought it was just like the basic, you know, these people were a little quacky, and you just left. But I didn't know that they were shaming you for leaving. That's just so despicable. I mean, I just don't understand that.
They practice shunning, and so I lost all of my friends. Like, so there are people who I've known since I was born that will never speak to me again. So I lost like all of my friends, my entire community, even the job that I had when I was leaving. One of my managers was a witness, and I believe that she started to harass me, and she would like go through my desk to try to find things that were wrong with what I was doing, and she was like picking through things and trying to report me to the other managers and like say that I was
what the hell?
Yeah, it was bad. It was so bad. It was
okay, Ryan. So let's be fair here. Is this what the Jehovah Witness enterprise is? Is that what it is, or do you like what part of you feels as if? Because think about it, you were just in this one group. What part of you feels as if that maybe it was just these particular psychos that were contorting this thing? That what part of you believes that?
Absolutely widespread. It's absolutely widespread. You can talk to any ex-witness, and like we will all have. So everyone's experience is a little different, but all of the parts that seem particularly crazy will be replicated in everybody's story. And so, like you can
to a non-witness, this sounds like a freaking like satanic cult. Like seriously.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so if you were to like look up ex-witness, there's like people telling their story on YouTube. You can find the videos of people telling their stories, and a lot of people.
This is one right here.
This will be one right here. But a lot of people have stories that sound nearly identical to mine. Yeah.
Is your story one of the positive ones, or are there worse ones?
There are worst ones.
Where would you rank your traumatic experience with them? Like, is this one of the more understandable ones, or are there ones that will just like completely just blow you away?
I would say I'm somewhere in the middle, and if anything, I feel like my story might be even better than like there are people whose story, I think whose experience was substantially worse than mine. I do believe that.
God, man. I'm so sorry that you had to. I mean, go through that.
But also, it's made me who I am today. So
yeah,
there is no world where Ryan exists without this experience. So it is part of who I am, and it's part of what has made me who I am.
Yeah.
And again, to kind of play a little bit of a devil's advocate, because there are things from my childhood that were positive, and there are things about my experience with the religion that I feel like were positive. And so I do think a lot of ex-witnesses, they're very focused on the negative. They're very focused on all of the bad things the religion does. But there is positive things in there that I remember, and that were pleasant childhood memories. So I am being very hard, but there are those things there as well.
Yeah. You told me a while back, and it was a while back, that you were part of the leftist book club. I want to go into that. Was that at New Hampshire University, or was that somewhere else?
So it was at the university, but it wasn't sponsored by the university. I guess it seems like from what they told me, like people from the public can just rent out rooms.
Yeah, man, I don't know what it is with you. You just you always getting caught in these like these.
I went on purpose. I went on purpose. And actually, I think let me hold on a second. Hold on a second. I'll be right back.
He's getting a treat.
Yeah. So
this is the exclusive right here.
This is the exclusive. Yeah. So I went to the Leftist Book Club because I wanted. So I was actually just looking for things to do on Meetup. So I didn't find it through the university. I found it on Meetup. It just happened that the meeting was at my university's library.
Yeah.
And, we hear people like James Lindsay talking about like race Marxism, and you hear these terms tossed around a lot. And I generally tend to agree with those perspectives. I do think that there's sometimes nuance that's lost on Twitter.
Yeah.
I feel like I might have some critiques, but like generally I do agree with those general sort of perspectives. But then I've also never heard the other perspectives as far as I've never had somebody sit down and be like, this is actually what our theory is or whatever. And so I want that. I want please convince me of your perspectives.
I mean, just a side note, it's kind of hard. I mean, we're talking about something like Marxism. I mean, it's kind of hard because they are very seldom open. Like, yeah, we're Marxists. Like even like I was watching a Castro documentary the other day, and he was, I mean, yeah, him and Khrushchev, like they talked about, keeping our Marxist diktats, concealing them and not being open about it. I mean, there's a videos of him saying this is not Marxism, like in these, dude, you're a Marxist, like, so it's kind of hard, but even the Marxists don't even want to admit or be forthcoming with it. So
a phenomena. That's definitely a phenomena. And there's different versions of Marxism, and but even just like the question, like, what is Marxism? And I want to know. I want to have somebody like enlighten me.
Your trait openness is probably what screws you.
I do think that I am high in openness. But I was like, I want to go into like the devil's den, and I want to be taught what Marxism is from somebody who is like an expert on Marxism or whatever. And again, like, because we hear these terms flung around out like communism and Marxism, like what is this? What is the difference? And I'm not entirely sure sometimes on how to explain these things in a concise way still. But I went to this group, and what was interesting, so it was an interesting group. There was 3 other guys there. One of them was like the leader. And we sat and we read leftist literature or papers that have been published before. And I don't remember the ones that we read anymore, but we went around, and it was so interesting because the format of the group was so incredibly similar to the Bible studies that Jehovah's Witnesses would have. And so like they were expected to have the paper printed out. People had everything highlighted, like witnesses, at least internally, like there's a joke about them. They sit and they'll study their literature and they highlight everything and they make all these notes. And it was very much like that. And we took turns reading paragraphs and like asking questions and discussing the literature that we were reading. And a lot of it sounded like total nonsense. Like a lot of it sounded like Nostradamus, like super open to interpretation and not at all clear what they're trying to say. And then at the end, they gave me literature to distribute. They gave me literature to distribute on campus, just like witnesses distribute literature. So they gave
Elder life all over again.
I know, right? I was like, what am I doing with my life? Why am I here?
It's weird because we're naturally driven. I mean, this is just, we couldn't beat the tribe horse any more than we're beating right now. We're just driven to go towards groups and to get in these groups and share ideas. This is what
we're social. There's no doubt that we are a social species. We don't exist independently, But yeah, so
there is no cow. There is no cow. Like there's cows.
Oh yeah. Exactly. Cows live as part of a herd.
Yeah.
Exactly. Humans too. Yeah, absolutely. But anyways, it's got like different stories. It's got on the Marxist.
I need that. Send it to me. I want to read it all.
Gave me a whole bunch of them. So if I have extras, I can send it to you. You might be able to go to their website. But they've got one on the Marxist use of psychoanalysis to understand fascism, Latin American Trotskyism, the millennial left and the Democratic Party and the politics of critical theory. But yeah, right I'm not trying to like dox them or anything either. But I'll send you the information afterwards.
Cool.
And I'll send you a brochure if or maybe I can take a picture of it too. They gave me a whole bunch, but I might have thrown them away and just kept the one because I don't.
Your evangelical urgencies are coming out. I'm feeling it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you have a moment for Marx? But anyways, so it was really interesting, and I thought it was very interesting to go. I would not be opposed to going again because I genuinely do want to understand some of these things as far as like what they're saying there, because like there are what the opponents are saying, and what are the people who are pro-Marxism, what are they saying, and how do they understand that? And I would like to like genuinely understand that perspective, but I do not have time to go to Marx's book clubs, so I don't know if I'll be going again. But it was an interesting experience for sure.
Yeah. So were those people like staunch like legit Marxists, or were they more like the preppy intellectual ones?
I'm not sure I'm not sure. I don't know how to answer that question, but I would say that the guy that was leading it was definitely a staunch Marxist. And when we were leaving, he said something to the effect of, "After all, without Marxism, our lives have no purpose."
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that. So this guy told you that without Marxism, it's so weird because the leaders of your Jehovah Witness program told you the same exact thing.
Similar, right? So it does seem like these beliefs are very similar to like my religious experience, and I feel like I see these commonalities. So as we're leaving, and he gives me a stack of brochures to distribute, and he says that our lives have no meaning without Marxism. And I was like, oh my god,
that rings a bell.
I've been here before. I feel like I've heard this somewhere before. But yeah, it's just very, very fascinating. I find it all very fascinating. And like that's part of why I'm interested in studying psychology, because I'm interested in like the human experience, and I genuinely want to understand people, why they think what they think, why they do what they do. And this is no different. And I try to approach them. I don't know that it's possible to approach these things with no bias at all, but
it isn't.
I try to approach it without. I try to be as like open and unbiased when approaching things as I can be, or to at least give it a shot. I don't think it's possible to do entirely, but I try at least.
Well, Ryan, I hope that your openness and your creativity, I hope that it's gonna. It has done you some harm, but like you said, I really think it's made you the person you are today.
For sure, yeah. Absolutely.
Wow. Well, this was some conversation. It's probably one of the most interesting ones. You had a really interesting story. That was entertaining. I appreciate this, man.
Yeah, no problem. We'll have to have
I hope you. Oh my gosh. Just don't join any more groups. Can you promise? Just don't join any more groups, man.
Not join any more groups. But I'd like to know about your story too. I know you've got a little bit of a story. We don't have time to discuss that, but maybe next time I'd like to hear.
Yeah, we'll get into that because mine is insane. All right, man. I guess we're gonna wrap things up here. Well, Ryan, I hope you have a great day, man.
All right,
God bless you.
All right. Thank you very much.